Hi, welcome to the Screenplay Lab. I'm your host, Jeff Parker. I'm a screenwriter, and on this podcast, we take one screenplay, we break it down, we find out what's interesting, unique about it, what we love about it, and most of all, what we can learn from it. And this week, our screenplay is The Drama, written by Kristoffer Borgli. Of course, it stars Zendaya and Robert Pattinson. It just came out beginning of April, so it's hot off the press, the script. And the movie's doing very well at the box office. Of course, it's an A24 movie. So excited to get into this one. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the first 5 pages of this script, word for word. Then we're going to dig into the scene, which you know exactly what I'm talking about. And then we will go to the final 4 or 5 pages of the script and see how he wraps it all up. So a lot to digest, hear, and learn from this script. And let's do it. Let's get into it. We begin on interior downtown coffee shop day and then memory in parentheses. And so right off the bat, we're like, okay, we're starting with a memory. This is not something that you would know on screen unless you put up a super or something. But here they're letting the reader know some information that the viewer doesn't know. He starts with a very strong setting and character introduction and interaction here, but he does it all in one pretty huge sized paragraph from what we're used to seeing. Most screenplay gurus would say never start your screenplay with a gigantic block of text. Here we have 9 lines of text. And a lot's going on here. And we learn about the screenwriter right away that he is not someone who writes in beats of filmable action, which is pretty common, or to take some of these and maybe put them in chunks where you have 3 or 4 paragraphs. Instead, we get 1/6 of a page of the screenplay that equals about 3 minutes of screen time in the movie. So think about that. 1/6 of the page and 3 minutes of screen time. So we're cramming stuff into this paragraph. In fact, if you dig deep, you can see there are 12 beats in this one block of text. One is the establishing shot of Charlie, who he is entering the coffee shop. 2 is that him spotting this other woman, Emma. 3 is the establishing shot of Emma and who she is and what she's doing. Number 4 is him, ordering a cup of coffee. 5 is he taking a seat and observing her is number 6 from a distance. And then she gets up, that's number 7 for a coffee refill. She leaves her book on the table, so we get a shot of the book. That's number 8. Charlie walks over to her. That's number 9. Takes a glance at the book, not to her, but to the table, sorry. Then he sits back down. That's number 10. He searches on his phone. That's number 11. And then he gets up again with confidence and approaches her. That's number 12. So 12 beats here. And if you were writing this out in a more traditional style, it would be a page and a half probably. Especially because we have these 2 main characters with very little character introduction, although compared to the other characters in the story, this is a huge character introduction. He doesn't really introduce anyone else at all. But for Charlie, we get his age, 30-something, but he elects to not do the parentheses 30S. We know that he's British, expat, slender build, sympathetic face. So we get some physical features of him. Emma, same thing, her age, charming, reserved, and that she reads. So that's the information we get. This is interesting. You don't see this often where you get this huge block of text. When I first read this, I thought, oh, I know what happened here. And it may still be the case, but I no longer think this. My initial thought was he had written something out, a page and a half, 2 pages of describing what happened here in a more traditional sense, and felt like he was taking too long to get to dialogue, or when he had something else and different, and then during filming discovered all this and went back and changed it to meet exactly what happens on screen, because this is what happens on screen. I don't think that anymore, because as I continue to read, I see that this shows up quite a bit. His voice on the page, his writing style is that he will often go pages and pages and pages with nothing but dialogue. 3-4 pages of just dialogue, very, very, very verbal. And then these large chunks of text that tell you what's going on. He gets in, he gets out as far as setting up information. We see this over and over again. So I think this is just his writing style. And this is the first screenplay that I've read of his. So then we get to the dialogue. And this is probably the strength of the screenplay. In fact, Robert Pattinson said that and I saw this in an interview, that it was the first time that he had read a screenplay in a long time where it really grabbed him and he was reading the lines in his head as an actor rather than just as a reader. And that he really could feel the voice of Charlie, the character that he embodied. And I think it's, because it's written in a very conversational way. And it just resonated with Robert. I mean, for him, it was kind of like how he talks, how he thinks. And if you've seen him in interviews and such, it does actually meet his cadence. I don't know if it was written specifically for him or not. I don't think so. Okay, so let's get into the first block of text here. So Charlie says, I love that book, ... It's great. Just read it. Beat. It's parenthetical. I just finished it last week, comma. So, ... beat. Okay, ... That's all. So it's got these sort of natural cadences in there. And you have to be careful of this as a screenwriter because, they always say, oh, you want naturalistic dialogue. You want naturalistic dialogue on the page that doesn't slow down the reader, but does ring authentic. So for Robert Pattinson, this hits. Another thing to look at here that is unique is that he uses, rather than the traditional ellipses, the ... he uses ... But he doesn't do it exclusively. He does this about 50, 60 times in the screenplay, and then another 70, 80 times he does the traditional ... But here right off the bat, we get the ... We also have the two parentheticals, the beat. So if you read this in a more naturalistic way rather than what I did for the audio listeners giving the ... it would read like this. I love that book. It's great. Just read it. I just finished it last week. So, okay, that's all. I wasn't acting that out, but I was trying to read it with the pauses and the beats. Then we go on with another large chunk of text here. It's 5 lines. She doesn't even bat an eye. Embarrassed and feeling the eyes of onlookers, Charlie returns to his table without making a connection. Resentment towards her starts to build, and he decides to leave. However, on his way out, he's struck by a sudden impulse to confront her. So again, this is a paragraph with quite a few beats. The thing to point out in this paragraph is the interiority that the screenwriter uses. He says embarrassed. He's telling us this person's embarrassed rather than describing what that looks like. He tells us inside this character, resentment is starting to build. So the screenwriter does write with quite a bit of interiority, and this is not the only place that this happens. Charlie, just so you know, I wasn't trying to hit on you. So this is him back at the table talking to Emma. And I circled here a little colon just to point out the writing style of the screenwriter. He uses colons quite a bit in the dialogue, which we don't see a lot. In fact, over 70 times in the screenplay, we have colons in the dialogue. Then to an action line, Emma now removes an earbud she had in her left ear all along, finally giving him her attention. And he uses the time hedge reveal now. So time hedge reveals like now, then. Sometimes we don't use those in screenplays just because as long as the screenplay is moving in one direction, there's really no need to point out time changes. Like this happens now, this happens, then this happens. It's going in chronological order. That's different though when you're doing flashbacks, going back and forth, or if there's time travel or something like that. But he uses it as part of his writing voice quite a bit. A lot of nows, a lot of ends. Charlie continues, he says, God forbid we talk to strangers, right? I genuinely just wanted to compliment the book. And then we get our first piece of dialogue from Emma. She says, "I'm sorry." Charlie says, "The book. I was just telling you I liked it. That's all." Emma, "Oh, sorry. I didn't hear you." And Charlie gives her a look of confusion. So now we get a quick one-line action. This is our first like more traditional action line here. Charlie gives her a look of confusion. And Emma says, "I'm deaf in this one." She points to her right ear. So we get that again. Charlie says, "Oh, I'm such an idiot. Do you?" And Emma says, "Do you want to start over?" And this is what makes this a meet cute. Now we're getting some meet cute territory. Charlie says, "What?" Emma says, "Try that again." And that's also important because one of the things you want to do as a screenwriter, right, is you want to tie the beginning of your script and the end of your script. They should mirror each other in some way. And that's what this scene, this is a mirror of the conclusion of the screenplay, which we'll look at later. And then we get another pretty large chunk of text here in the action lines. She puts her earbud back in and resumes reading her book. Charlie hesitates, unsure what to do, but returns to his table. After a moment, he approaches again, circles to the other side of her table and taps her shoulder. Emma removes her earbud and looks at him. And then we have a quotation mark here, which is not really tied to another one, so that might be a typo or something. And a lot of action taking place in this action line. If you were writing in beats, and you don't have to do that. I'm not saying that's preferred or that's what you should do, but it is more conventional in these days to try to write into shootable beats. Here we have like 4 or 5 in this one paragraph. But I kind of like this. Just it's not my style. It's not how I write. I wouldn't adapt this as a writer for me. But reading it, I appreciate it because it moves you. Like, okay, it's like we're going. Like a lot's happening on page 1 and 2, and it doesn't take us 7 pages to get there. So it is a different way of doing it. Charlie says, "That's a great book. I just read it. ... So now we have our first traditional ellipses after a whole lot of ... And I have here, welcome to Meet Cuteville. I mean, this is really cool. In a previous episode, we talked about meet cutes and how they don't have to apply to rom-coms. You can use them when any important characters meet. But this is a more traditional meet cute for sure. She smiles at him. He smiles back. We have 2 sentences joined together by a comma. Your English teacher would call that a comma splice. But this is a choice, part of his writing voice. And that's the end of scene 1. And it's 1.5 pages. A lot happened in 1.5 pages. Then we go to interior Charlie and Emma's apartment, day, present time in parentheses. So, when you're a screenwriter, you have to teach your reader how to read your screenplay, and that because they're all pieces of art, they're all different. If it was, it's not just like a formula. So reading a screenplay is a different experience depending on who the writer is. Here we've learned now, okay, we're going to see these parentheses at the end of the scene headings that tell us where we are in time, memory versus present time, especially if we see it again on the 3rd one. But it's something to be paying attention to. Charlie, now 3 years later, is seated at his dining room table with a laptop in front of him, talking through his wedding speech with his friend Mike. So some things to digest here and learn about. He has the clause, now 3 years later. So he's telling us about the shift in time, which is an unfilmable. I mean, unless you, again, put a super up that tells you 3 years later, there's really no way to depict that on the screen. But we're getting information as a reader that the viewer doesn't get. And then another thing to point out is Mike, the character introduction. It's all caps because it's the first time we're seeing this character. He does that. But there's no description. We don't know what he looks like, who he is, what his personality's like, what he's wearing, nothing. And the same thing with the other supporting characters in the screenplay. I've read a lot of scripts, hundreds at this point. I don't know if I've ever seen that where they're, a lot of times characters will just be a name, but I don't think I've ever seen that as a true choice where it's like none of the characters are introduced except for the main two characters. Now, again, I believe this is a choice because it's consistent. Because the other two supporting characters are big characters in this screenplay and in the movie. And so that was definitely done on purpose. And it is a story about two people. So he's keeping the spotlight, keeping the focus on Charlie and Emma. Mike's just a dude. And casting, put whoever they want in it. I guess if he's a friend, you would think he would be around the same age. Although I have some younger friends and older friends, so it certainly doesn't have to be that way. We don't know if Mike is male or female, although Mike's a traditional male name, but not always. But anyway. Then we go to the dialogue. Charlie, parenthetical, says here, reading, and then quotation mark. And after 15 excruciating minutes of trying to improve my first impression, I miraculously got her number, your number, end quote. So this is a choice where the writer is saying that when the character is reading, we're going to put that in quotation marks to separate it from regular. I would say that's probably not the most traditional style of doing that. Usually, the character says what they say. It doesn't matter if they read it or whatever. It's coming out of their mouth. So it'd be one, or some people might put that in italics. Here it's with the quotation mark. And he's consistent. He does it throughout. He also uses quotation marks in dialogue in other ways, which we'll see in a minute. Then Mike says, it's such a good story. So the first thing we're learning about Mike is that he's a very supportive friend. Charlie says, so I'll open with that. Then I'll talk about our first date. And that's the end of that scene. So now we get to the next scene, interior upscale restaurant night, parentheses, memory. Okay, now we're going memory, present time, memory. Okay, we're going to be jumping around a little bit. This is what he's teaching us. And this scene is so interesting because it starts with an action line. It says, we see Emma and Charlie having dinner. We see, so we're getting some camera direction here, including us as the eye of the camera. What we see is an immersive activity. But that's it. That's all it says. We see Emma and Charlie having dinner. Then it goes into a wall of dialogue that lasts a page and a half or more. And that's a long time. But we learn later reading the screenplay, that's just the beginning of it. We have these several 3 pages of dialogue, several others that are up to 4 pages of just straight walls of dialogue with no action lines. No description of the setting, the characters, the action. It just gets right into it. And sort of popcorn back and forth. Emma, Charlie, Emma, Charlie. Starts with Emma. She says, so what did you think of the ending? Of what? The book. I finally finished it. I don't think I got it. I'm not sure if I missed something. Oh, yeah, the ending was a bit strange, wasn't it? Yeah, what do you think happened? Did she die, or that's how I read it? Yeah, but that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't? No, because then what was that thing with the mirror? The mirror. What was that again? That was like the whole thing, the ending with the mirror. Oh, I don't really remember that part. Didn't you say you just read it? Yeah, but you don't remember the mirror? No, I guess I just thought it was like a metaphor or something, because like usually mirrors represent, they're not really in the same sense. That drops the performance now that we have a parenthetical. No, actually, I didn't read it. And the parenthetical drops the performance is a unique choice because it's an explainer rather than how the actor would deliver the line or trying to squeeze in some sort of action that's taking place while the line is being delivered. This is more of explaining the tone and well, I guess that would be giving the actor some sort of direction how to deliver the line. But I'm just not used to seeing it like that. Drops the performance. Then Emma says, what? Charlie says, yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about. I just kind of glitched out when I saw you. I just wanted to talk to you. Really? Yeah. You even doubled down, you creep. And above that is the parenthetical with a smile. So it's a back and forth dialogue heavy scene. Interior, Charlie and Emma's apartment. Present. This is a very broad scene heading. It doesn't tell us where in the apartment, could be anywhere. And that's usually not a problem at all, because then we begin with an action line that kind of anchors us and tells us where we are. Here we don't get that either. We go right in the dialogue. So you can bet there were a lot of people asking the director, okay, where is this taking place? Where do we need to shoot this? The set decorators and everybody's like, what? Goes into dialogue right away. Charlie reading. Okay, well, that should be an indication. It doesn't take much to figure out where we're at. We're back with Charlie and Mike. So now we're back and forth here. Charlie reading says, why I just didn't read the damn book speaks to my laziness, and why you didn't run out the door speaks to your extreme belief in finding the goodness in others. End quote. Mike says, Rachel would have walked out. We don't know who Rachel is, but that's okay. Charlie says, then I have a whole paragraph about the way she laughs. And we cut away to a montage of moments of Emma laughing at home, in the park, at a restaurant, in a bookstore. Her infectious and cute laugh never fails to move Charlie. Then back to the present. So we have a 4-line paragraph here that does a couple of things. It sets us up. It tells us we're going into a montage, all caps. And then it gives us all the shots. The home, the park, the restaurant, the bookstore. And her, all about her smile, describes what the shots will be. And then it brings us back to the present time. All of this in one condensed paragraph. And throughout all the episodes here at the Screenplay Lab, we've discovered over 30 different ways to format montages. This is the most condensed way to just cram it all in there. But it's very clear of what should be shot and what it would look like. And then we come out of the montage and Charlie says, and then let's see, parenthetical reading, quote, you always reminds me to live life as a comedy and not a drama. I think that was probably a typo, and this is the movie title drop. So it's not exactly right because it's the drama instead of a drama, but it is italics here, so it was on purpose. It's not me reading into it. And that's to say, wink, wink, this is the title of the movie. Interior, Charlie and Emma's apartment, living room, memory. So here we do get a specific place in the apartment, the living room. Charlie, dressed in a t-shirt and sweatpants, stands in the living room, passionately venting about a frustrating work situation. And then it goes into the dialogue. So here the screenwriter has chosen to tell us what this conversation is about, why it's important, instead of just dropping us into the dialogue in the screenplay. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't do that. It is the less common way to do it, but here it was clearly a choice. Charlie says, and I even said in the meeting, quote, why host a retrospective when we know he's a piece of shit, end quote. But they just don't care. It's so irresponsible and it will backfire for sure. So here earlier I was talking about how he uses the quotation marks through the dialogue. Here he's not reading, he's actually saying what he said to someone else, and the writer wants to indicate that with quotation marks. And then for sure is italicized at the end of the dialogue box for emphasis for the actor. The more common way is to underline it or to not do anything with it and just let the actor discover that themselves. But here he uses the italics. Emma listens intently until suddenly she pulls his pants down. This is a funny scene in the movie. Despite this, he remains standing, completely serious. So this short action line does a couple of things. Well, one thing I want to point out is the ly adverbs, which you're probably being told by people not to use those, and not because you can't use them, because you certainly can. Sometimes it's the best choice, but sometimes there's an active verb that is can do more than verb adverb. But here I only pointed out because we have three of them in one very small action line. We have intently, suddenly, completely. And Charlie says, Emma, I'm serious. This isn't funny. And Emma says, yeah, I agree. It's not funny at all. But it is funny. It's a funny scene. There's a long beat where Charlie just stands there staring at Emma with his pants around his ankles, refusing to acknowledge the humor. Emma just stares back at him until he cracks. And with that, we cut back to colon. So again, you see how many colons are in the screenplay, a lot. Here, he elects to put the cut back into the action line as opposed to on the right side of the page as a transition. And he says, we cut back. So we're going into the we see, we hear, we do. And that takes us into the next scene, which is interior Charlie and Emma's apartment, present. So it's the same place, but we don't know where. It's just somewhere in the apartment. Charlie says, and then I'm not sure if there's any good way to do it, but I kind of want to include something about. Okay, so now remember I talked about how you have to teach your reader how to read your screenplay. So in real time here, I'm being taught how to read this screenplay because now I know if it's a scene that doesn't start with an action line, we're coming back to the previous place in that scene. So this is Charlie and Mike talking. We know from way back, or we should remember, hopefully. I would probably put in a reminder, but he's assuming that the reader will remember they're sitting at a table in the kitchen, I believe. See, I really don't remember. But anyway, we're back to this conversation. And before Mike has a chance to say anything, we go into a montage. We have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-line paragraph. It says, we cut to a quick montage, all caps, of Emma and Charlie having passionate sex across various settings, a bed, a bathroom, a couch, the floor of the hotel room. It seems they simply can't get enough of each other. Then we return to the present moment where Mike is staring at Charlie with a deadpan expression. So this is an even more compressed montage description because we're announcing that we're doing a montage. Then we're talking about all the shots that are required for the montage. Then we're telling the reader we're coming out of the montage. All in one paragraph, just like we did before. But the added value here, the next step that the writer takes is that now he's telling us that when we come out of the montage, Mike is going to be staring at Charlie with this deadpan expression. So it's a lot going on in one paragraph. But we now know this is his writing voice. This is what he does because we see it over and over again. All right, that is the first 5 pages, and then we're going to skip down to the scene, the inciting incident. And you'll remember that that's Emma and Charlie and Mike and Mike's partner, Rachel, and they're at the wedding venue dining hall area, and they're having this long. This is remarkable. This is why I wanted to point this out. The scene starts on page 17. They're all at this place, and they're testing drinks and food and cake at the reception. You know, if you've been married, you know what this is like, possibly. On page 17, interior wedding venue, dining hall. Later that night, Emma, Charlie, Mike, and Rachel are seated at a single decorated table at the center of a vast, empty dining hall in the old manor house. They are choosing from 5 different wine bottles displayed on the table. This is the first time in the movie, I believe. Now, you could check me on this, and I might be wrong, because I saw the movie the day it came out. I was really looking forward to it. And Elena Hamm, who's an amazing actor, she's so good. She is Rachel, and I believe, and again, I could be wrong, but I believe the first time we see her in the movie is in this scene at the table. We've heard about her from Mike, but we haven't seen her, and then we see her in this table, and she is the antagonist. She's the one that gets all this information out of Emma and then uses it against her or throws gasoline on the fire. But in the screenplay, that's not the case. in the screenplay, there's a couple of scenes where Emma is doing the same thing that Charlie is doing, talking about what she wants to do for her vows at the wedding or the speech, and bouncing those off of Rachel and Rachel having an opinion about it. I thought, and again, I'm probably wrong, I'm wrong all the time, but I thought in the film that was not Rachel, because I was looking forward to seeing Elena Ham and didn't see her till this scene in my mind. I thought it was Emma's work friend, her boss at work, that she was doing that with. Doesn't matter. But if that is the case, then that is a difference in the script. And that's no big deal. But there's always differences. This is the beginning of this scene, and it is a doozy. This scene is huge. It starts on page 17, and it goes and goes and goes. It goes 15 pages before we get to Emma and her story of the reason we're there. When you're writing a scene, you always want to remember, what am I trying to accomplish in the scene? What is the, it might be multiple things, but what is the most important thing? What is the main thing I'm trying to accomplish in the scene? Here it is, the inciting incident, that Emma spills the beans about what she did. That was the most horrible thing she ever did in life. This is a parlor game that Rachel has brought up, demands that everyone plays it against their will. No one wants to do it, where everyone has to go around the room and say, what is the worst thing they've ever done in their life? And obviously, if you're watching this podcast, interested in the screenplay, you've watched the movie. So that's why I never say spoiler alert or worry about spoilers. 15 pages, though, before we actually get to Emma doing it. And there was a whole bunch of stuff before they even got to the game, talking about various things, the woman they thought was using heroin and all of this stuff. Then Emma's explanation of what she does, starting on page 30, is 4 pages long, which is appropriate. So it ends up being an 18-page scene. Isn't that something? 16% of the screenplay is this scene, the inciting incident, where it ends on page 35. It is very dialogue dense, which is part of why it's so many pages, without a lot of action lines. Just sometimes there's 3 or 4 pages of just dialogue here. So yeah, I think if you haven't seen this script and you didn't want to spend an hour or two reading the whole script, I would do this. Pick it up, start on 17, read to 35, and see how he did this. Not that you should do it this way or not do it this way, but we're always trying to see what are all the different things the screenwriters can do, are doing to create their art. We pick it up with the final 3 pages of the screenplay starting on page 109. This is a 111-page screenplay, which is a great length for this type of film. Interior woodland diner night. And when I was watching the movie and they were at the inciting incident scene, and somehow, I forget why, but for some reason, Charlie brought up this diner and how it was open 24 hours a day. And then that was it. They didn't talk about it again. They moved on. I immediately, my bat ears went up and I thought, oh, that's going to be huge. And I imagine that's going to be the ending scene. And I was right. Not that I'm patting myself on the back for that, but the more you dig into screenplays, when you read a lot of them, you start to see the things that can be planted that have to pay off, or else they shouldn't be in there. Like if it doesn't pay off, then that was a mistake. It shouldn't be in there. You want to take that out. And to me, that was an obvious one when he mentioned that. Okay, so we're at the diner, and we have an 11-line paragraph. So this mirrors the first paragraph of the screenplay. This one also has 12 beats, just like the opening paragraph of the screenplay. But it's all compressed together into this gigantic block of text, and it says, Charlie, in his tuxedo with a bruised face, looks conspicuously out of place at this diner, filled with small crowds of diners and those seeking refuge. He orders a cheeseburger with fries and sits alone, observing the patrons, a lively group of friends in their mid-20s having partied all night, a homeless man sipping a soda, staring out the window, an Uber driver listening to a podcast on speakers loudly. Suddenly, Emma enters wearing a puffer coat over her wedding dress. They lock eyes momentarily before she walks past him to order. Confused, Charlie watches and waits as she returns with her food. So I won't go through it like I did the first time, but you can see the 12 different scenes, I'm not scenes, I'm sorry, the 12 different beats that are filmable in this one chunk. Now, I'm not saying you have to have 12 different action lines, or you should have 12 different action lines. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying more conventionally, you would break this up into some sort of chunks. But here he compresses it, which is certainly his voice on the page. Emma says, "Hi." Charlie says, "Hey, mind if I sit?" "No, of course." Emma sits down. Charlie stares at her for a long time, then tears start falling. And it's a great scene in the movie. Charlie, "I'm sorry, I'm so..." Double dash. Emma says, "Do you live around here?" So here he uses the double dash in the traditional sense of the character being interrupted. And he connects it to the word rather than giving it space. So that's very common with what we normally see. And this is the "do you live around here" is the big payoff from the first scene, because she is clearly playing a game where she's starting over, and she's allowing him to start over. And this is exactly what she did in the coffee shop. So set him up, knock him down. That's what's happening here. Gives us some closure. Charlie doesn't get it, though, right off the bat. He says, "What?" Emma says, "I feel like I've seen you before." ... Charlie says, "What are you talking about?" Emma, "Just that I've seen you here before. I come here sometimes too." So she doesn't let up. She's not ready to say, "Hey, we're doing that thing." She's staying in character, which is great. Charlie still doesn't understand. Okay. So this is the writer making sure us as readers know what we're reading, not trusting us to see it in the dialogue. Hey, just in case you haven't caught it, Charlie still doesn't understand. And then Emma says, "I'm Emma, by the way." She puts her hand forward. Charlie suddenly understands and grabs her hand. So now he's letting us know that he understands. And Emma says, "What's your name?" Charlie says, "Charlie. I live 2 blocks from here." And again, we see this natural flow, the way he writes in very conversational tones, what Robert Pattinson really loved and resonated with him about the script. Emma says, "Right. What happened to your face?" "I got into a fight. I was trying to save a woman from being robbed just now." "Oh, really?" "Yeah, this guy just stole her baby, actually, from her stroller, and I had to stop him." "She was out walking her baby in the middle of the night?" "Yeah, I thought that was odd, too." "Wow, that's so brave of you." "Thank you." "Well, it's so nice to meet you, Charlie." "Nice to meet you too, Emma." They stare at each other, looking disheveled and exhausted, but with a hint of happiness in their eyes. Charlie says, "Emma, if we're doing this, there's something I got to get off my chest first. Something I haven't told you." Emma is immediately frightened by the prospect, but after a beat, she leans over to him and she says, "Whispered in my ear." This is also a callback from probably page 10 or 11, and also you've probably seen it in the movie, where he wants to give her his deep, dark secret, and she allows him to do it in her deaf ear. But there's a bit of tension and mystery there, because we wonder as a viewer and a reader, like, is this real? I mean, she's obviously, we find out later, she's very deceptive. And maybe she's not deaf, maybe she can hear, and she's using this to get information from him. It's never really said either way. But this is a callback again. Set him up, knock him down. And this is his outlet to get some stuff off of his chest, and he speaks into her deaf ear. She turns her deaf ear toward him. He hesitates for a second, but accepts the offer, leans over, and whispers his secret. Cut to credits. And we will conclude by showing cut to credits. That's something you don't see very often either. Usually it would be end, fade to black, nothing. And, I have often seen an indication of credits at the end of a screenplay, but it's usually because there's an end credit scene, and they want to indicate that the movie's over, there's credits, and now this scene. Here it's not, it's just cut to credits. And that is The Drama by Kristoffer Borgli, and an enjoyable movie. Some people love it, some people did. It is there for you to view and have your opinions about it. And this is the screenplay, and I feel like we learned some things today. And thank you to him for giving us that opportunity. And since it's almost May 15th, of course, I'm going to plug my son's movie, Obsession, by Curry Barker and his team, coming out here very shortly. And it's already gaining a lot of heat all over, billboards all over town. Focus Features is doing a tremendous job marketing this worldwide. Curry just got back from a trip in Europe, several countries over there, meeting people, doing interviews, doing screenings. It was a dream come true, I know, for him. As a young Harry Potter lad, going over to London was very special. So I can't wait for you to see it. It's going to be awesome. So proud. Also, if you want to find out what I'm up to, you can always check out my website, jeff-barker.com. I'm on all the socials as well. So I'm just so happy that you're here and we're doing this, and I will see you with another screenplay next time. Take care.
Thank you for watching my dad's podcast.